Vikings fans? Welcome into another episode of the Skol. I'm Evan.
And I'm Austin.
We're just a couple of dudes that like talking about the Vikings and drinking good beer.
Yeah, we do. And I'm excited to get in that beer. But first, let me just say thank you to our sponsor, Big Top Ventures. We're brought to you today by Big Top Ventures. They can get you the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts in Mexico or Jamaica. If you're interested in that, go ahead and reach out to them. Send them an email. Tell them you're interested in an all-inclusive in Mexico or Jamaica. Their email, I think we usually put it right on the screen there, yep. But I'll read it out. It's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. That is bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com, and they'll hook you up. So yeah, thanks, Big Top Ventures.
You can also find their email in the description of our podcast. So wherever you're listening or watching, that should be in the description box below as well. So be sure to send them an email if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, something I'll be doing. Well, a trip I'll be going through them in just over a month. Yeah. And I can't wait.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
What else is exciting is we've got these mystery beers here.
Yeah.
Something that you started for us last week. So
well, let's be clear. It's an idea that I saw on TikTok, but I'm sure people have been doing it forever.
Yep.
But yeah, I liked it last week. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. We got to enjoy a good sour. Where was that one from? Great Revivalist.
Yeah, Great Revivalist. We had their Peach Wrangler, I think is what they call it. It was delicious.
It was delicious. And not one that I probably would have reached for.
I would have never purposely reached for it if not for our show.
Yeah. This one that I've got for us today, I have followed your lead. It's wrapped in tinfoil to disguise the brewery and the specific beer that we have here tonight. This is one we have reached for before. This is a monumental moment in Skol Hop history. This is the first time, to my knowledge, and we've kept a pretty good record here, that we've doubled back on a beer.
Okay.
This is the first time we've doubled back on a beer. So we've had, up till this point, 38 different beers.
Is that including, because we've had at least one episode where we had two different beers.
That's true.
And I think we might have had two episodes where we've done that.
So maybe we're up to like 42 or 43 individual beers. Anyways, regardless, this is the first time since we've started the show that we are going to have the same beer again. But I wanted to do it that way because I wanted to see if you could identify it.
Oh man, I'm excited. I can't wait. Might I say, last week I was kind of tooting my own horn a little bit by my tinfoil job.
I hope you're not critiquing mine.
No,
it's
Evan,
not good.
You knocked me out of the water on this. Like, yeah, sure, mine was more smooth, but yours is like more secure. You didn't.
Well, that's because
on the tinfoil.
I did a base layer, and then I was like, "This is gonna fall off." So then I did another layer, and I really like crunched it down to make sure that it wasn't gonna come off.
Yeah.
So even on the bottom, like you were worried last week about the bottom, and I'm like, well, there's nothing on the bottom.
Sure.
But
yeah,
to be safe.
So I am critiquing you, but saying that you did a much better job than I did last week. So Skol.
Thank you. Skol. Well, we should crack these open and pour them up.
Yeah.
And I want to see what you think.
All right. I can't wait. It's a beer that we've had on the Skol Hop before.
And you have your laptop, so you could pull up our list.
I'm not gonna.
You're not gonna?
I'm not gonna.
All right.
I'm gonna try to keep this as on the top of my head as possible.
All right.
So I'm excited.
You ready?
I'm ready. I've been wanting to ask questions, but I'm like, no, I'm just gonna wait.
Let's do the pour.
Okay.
And then I'll answer your questions after the pour.
I wonder if I can get it just off the pour.
Typical Austin pour.
You know what?
Pretty hard.
You gotta live it. Okay. All right. Well,
so
let's just.
Here's, if you're watching on YouTube or wherever, you can see.
Yeah.
For those that aren't watching and just listening, can you describe it?
Yeah. So this is not like a hazy IPA or a light cider or anything like that. This is a dark beer.
Would you expect anything differently from me?
No. Although I can't tell if it's like a dark beer or if it's just like a nice heavy amber.
Okay.
I'm going to lean, just looking at it. I haven't tried it. I tried to cheat and lick off the can a little bit, but I couldn't get anything off that. I'm going to guess it's a pretty dark amber, knowing you.
Okay.
just by looking at it. I may totally go back on that here in a second.
Give it a good smell.
Oh man, it definitely smells familiar.
See, I'm kind of like, I know what it is, but I'm trying to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah, like
a
if you
little
didn't
bit.
know what it was.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. Like
Yeah.
I haven't taken a sip of it yet, and I haven't had this beer since we had it the last time
Okay.
on the show.
All right. Well, let's Skol it up and let's give this a try.
Skol. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely just as good as I remember it being.
Oh, single speed, tipsy cow.
Tip the cow.
Tip the cow?
It is not. Have we
No?
had that one on the show?
I think we have.
We have not had that one on the show. We've
right,
had
let's-
single speed, but we haven't had tip the cow.
Okay.
Tip the cow is like really coffee heavy. Like they use sidecar coffee in the brew. There's no coffee in this. This is not a coffee beer.
Oh, so it's not a stout?
It's not a stout. Nope.
Oh man, I jumped in on that. I was super confident.
You were. That's all right though. I appreciate the willingness to just jump right in. So Forrest and I, we were asking questions about the brewery location.
Yeah, I should probably start doing that.
You could ask some of those questions.
Have you and I attended this brewery together?
We have not together.
To your knowledge, have either of us attended this?
To my knowledge, you have, but I have not.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure,
All right.
based on our previous conversations.
Okay. Is this a Des Moines area brewery?
That's a good question. Hang on.
They may have other locations.
Yes.
I'm thinking, like, if you think of this brewery, your first thought, would it be in the Des Moines area?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. Actually, no, I don't think... Oh, no, they have a tap room in Des Moines. Just on a quick Google search. But it's not... It doesn't originate in Des Moines. They've expanded to Des Moines.
Okay. All right. Man. This is not Big Grove, is it?
It is a Big Grove beer.
Okay, it's a
Yes.
Big Grove beer.
Think about the overall color of the beer.
Oh,
I think when we first
Yeah.
poured this beer,
Yeah,
we
it's-
commented on how good it looked in
Yeah.
these glasses because it looked like a football. right?
yeah. Is there a mascot associated with this beer?
There is.
Did we give our own a little nudge of a name to this mascot?
Yes, I think you're...
All right.
I think you're on it
This is
now.
Big Grove's Burch the Bear.
Yes.
Although I like Burch the Brown Bear a lot better. So Big
Yes.
Grove, please consider changing that name.
Burch the Brown Bear.
Burch the Brown Bear.
Because it's a brown ale.
Or make a variation that like adds a coffee flavor to this and then name that the
Ooh.
Brown Bear or something.
Ooh, that's a good idea, too.
Although don't change the beer. If
beer
you
is
do,
good.
I guess make a variation and then say Burch the Brown Bear. Burch the Bear, the name is good. The beer is great. I like this one a lot. And I'm really proud of myself. You did help me a lot with the brewery. But yeah, I don't know if I've had this outside of the last time we tried it on the episode either.
Yeah, it's a good one, though. I saw it on the shelf, and I'm like, hey, we're going to do that one tonight. and
you
see
made
if,
a good decision.
See if Austin can guess it.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, it didn't take you that long. It took you, I don't know, a couple of minutes.
I did totally whiff on my first guess when I thought I was pretty confident.
It's not a bad guess, though. I think the only thing that would have caused me to say it's not a stout is it just doesn't have the creamy, foamy head to it that a stout typically has. And we had those series of No Coast stouts,
Yep.
which, that was the most stouts per capita in a week or 2 weeks or whatever.
Nitro beers for the No Coast.
True. But they were like nitro stouts.
Yeah.
Right? So anyways, I really kind of was into stouts there for a few weeks, and I still like them.
Yeah.
Even though they're not my go-to.
We're also in the spring time of year where you're more looking for a lighter beer at this point, right?
Yeah.
Other than the stouts. This Burch the Bear, I feel like would hit no matter what.
There he is.
Yeah,
There's Burch
there
the
he
bear.
is. Burch the Brown Bear.
He's coming out of hibernation. It's springtime. He's ready to go. Well, it's a fun game, and it's Kind of a fun little tradition. Maybe this is a new wrinkle we add.
If that's how we do it every week, I'm okay with that. I like it. Because plus it gives us an opportunity to name other breweries if we guess it wrong. Like we probably wouldn't have said Single Speed today if I didn't completely whiff on my guess.
That's true. And truth be told, we like Single Speed a lot.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I looked at one of their beers on the shelf before grabbing this one. So maybe next time, Single Speed.
Maybe next time. I'm not gonna. I guess it's my turn next time. So yeah.
Wink.
Although it would be interesting now, since I totally whiffed on my guess with the Tip the Cow, to try this right next to the Tip the Cow, and see how wrong I totally was.
I'm guessing it would be a pretty different beer.
Drastic difference, yeah.
But both are still good in their own right. So good stuff. And thanks to Big Grove for making good beer. We appreciate it. And hopefully someday I'll make my way out to Big Grove.
I mean, let's go off topic a little bit. We are planning a Skol Hop Brew Hop tour.
Yes, we are.
This summer for Iowa breweries. And I mean, we've kind of talked about some of the breweries we want to hit up, and Big Grove is definitely on that list. But let's just say it right now. If you are associated with or are an Iowa brewery and you think it'd be cool to have us come in and try the beers and post up some content on the podcast or YouTube or anywhere, let us know. Iowa's not that big of a state. We are open to driving almost anywhere, especially if it means beer is at the end of the destination. So we're still finalizing our brew tour locations, and let us know if you want us to be there.
Yeah, we'll definitely be listening.
Absolutely.
So, and we might just show up anyways, even if you don't ask us to.
Yeah.
So
during business hours and be paying patrons, but still.
Yes, of course. But yeah, that's coming up. That's
we're planning
this summer.
Yep.
So
July-ish time frame. Yeah.
We're looking ahead to that. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do that to kind of celebrate a big milestone in Skol Hop history.
Yeah.
Today though, this is episode 39.
It is. We've got we can kind of debate maybe on who the best Viking to wear 39 is. I think the two of us would remember Hussein Abdullah a little bit more than the other guy who probably is the best Viking to wear 39. But yeah, we've got most recently Chandon Sullivan in KOC's first year. Pretty forgetful year in Minnesota. And he only lasted the 1 year in Minnesota. I don't know where he is now. I want to say maybe the Jets or something. Before that, the last guy to consistently wear 39 was Hussein Abdullah, which there's a kind of fun story about him. Interesting story. I don't know about fun, which I'll get to here in a minute. And then Carl Lee from the 80s and 90s. And Carl Lee made a couple of Pro Bowls, 3 Pro Bowls, and a first-team All-Pro in 1988. So Carl Lee is probably
arguably the best. Yeah. And I remember hearing his name. Like, my family have been Vikings fans going all the way back to the 60s and 70s. So
yeah, but I mean, to be fair, his Vikings tenure only overlapped with our lives for as many as 3 seasons, maybe 2.
Yeah, we were babies.
So
we were toddlers at best.
Yeah, so we haven't seen him play, and it's unfortunate that sometimes even these guys that make 1, 2, 3 Pro Bowls in their career, after they're done for a long time, like once you hit the next era, those guys are still easy to forget. Yeah. Unless you're like the die-hard, you were watching them, they were your favorite player or family member, or something. Right. Just because so many players cycle in and out every year. But yeah, those are the only names I had written down: Chandon Sullivan, Hussein Abdullah, and Carl Lee. As far as 39 number,
we'll go with the Carl Lee episode.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to see that Carl Lee was the best to wear 39. Although Hussein Abdullah, and I'm probably pronouncing his first name wrong, I apologize. I'm pretty sure it was his rookie year. He was a later round draft pick. His rookie year, training camp overlapped with the time of Ramadan for him. Something he observes. I think he has a brother who also played in the NFL around the same time he did. And in his rookie year, he was in training camp, which, I mean, as you can imagine, an elite, professional level athlete during July, July and August, having to exert a lot of energy, fighting for your job, for your life. It's not like he was a multiple time MVP that had no worries about his roster spot. And in Ramadan, you're restricted on the times and types of calories you're able to take in the times of day. And he was kind of, I don't know about keeping it a secret, but he wasn't making a lot of noise about, hey, I'm not able to drink water right now or whatever. I can't consume the calories to replenish what I'm putting out on this NFL training camp. And he made the team, and then it came out. He kind of told people like, yeah, that was really tough. Like I had to figure out when I can eat and stuff. And the team was like, whoa. So the next year, the team nutritionist like worked with him, and they came up with a plan, because it's not that, and I'm so ignorant on all of Ramadan and stuff like that, but it's not that you can't eat during that time. It's restricted on the time frame that you can and what you can. But I'm pretty sure the team nutritionists worked with him and came up with a plan for him to be fully good to go throughout training camp in the early part of the season, which is pretty cool. And I've always remembered that story when I've heard his name every once in a while through the years.
Yeah, and honestly, I'd never heard that story.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And pretty cool that he followed through on his religious beliefs to, endure all of that, especially during an NFL training camp, which has to be one of the more rigorous physical periods of anybody's life, let alone.
And that's when you can chug Gatorade and, consume all the calories you need.
Yep.
Anyways, so. Yeah, interesting stuff.
Good stuff. Well, later this week, the NFL schedule is coming out, and that's kind of a big deal. And something that's interested me about how the league chooses to go about doing that is they're never really super clear about when it's going to be. No. They always say, like, it's going to come out in the first couple of weeks of May. And then, like, I always go back, like, okay, well, last year it came out on this day in May, and it was a Thursday, so it's got to be the first Thursday in May, or it's got to be the second Thursday in May. I was driving down the road, I was listening to our local, like, ESPN affiliate radio station, because that's typically what I listen to in the car. And there was an advertisement for the NFL schedule, and I, like, perked up, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're going to say when the date is.
Yeah.
And then they said, coming in the early part of May, and I'm like, oh my gosh, come on, like, can you just tell us? So anyways, I found out, I think it was like yesterday or today, that it was going to be this week, and it's going to be this Thursday. Is
that even official? Like, or is that just
so.
People are pretty confident? Like, I don't think I've seen, and I'm not saying you're wrong, you're probably absolutely right, but I don't think I've seen the NFL come out and say, hey, get ready, because at this time on NFL Network, we're going to release the schedule, you know what I mean? Like, and that may be the case. Maybe they have, and I just missed it.
Well, now I'm second guessing it, and I'm looking at it.
But usually that's the kind of story when a lot of, like, Adam Schefter and those type of people start saying, like, oh yeah, we could see a schedule sometime this week. Like, usually that's because they've heard something, and they've been told something, but been told not to tell every detail. So everything on, like, the NFL's website says coming in May. They're very vague about it intentionally. We're gonna operate under the assumption that it's either this Thursday or next Thursday, because they typically do it on a Thursday. And we're recording right now on Monday, the 6th of May. So, yeah, honestly, like, this could be something that between us saying these words right now and whenever you're listening to our podcast in the next couple of days, you already know. Like, maybe they will have already announced, like, yes, officially it will be Thursday, whatever that day is, the 9th or Friday. From the rumblings we're seeing on Twitter and stuff, I'd agree with you. I would assume this week we'll at least have a date of when the schedule will be announced. But what we might know beforehand is when the Vikings play in London. They usually announce those games in times earlier than the whole schedule. You may not know this. Weirdly, Dustin Baker is really good at getting details of the schedule, and he'll know a day or even the morning before they officially announce. So keep an eye on Dustin Baker on Twitter and stuff. So he's usually a good resource for all of that. But we do know the opponents.
Yeah. And I've got them pulled up here, and I think they are in seemingly alphabetical order.
Okay.
More or less. So this is from fbschedules.com, 2024 Vikings schedule. So obviously we know that the Vikings will have a home and away series against their divisional foes. So
yeah, the Bears,
2 games
Packers,
against
and Lions.
Lions, Packers, and Bears every year. It always happens. I guess this site doesn't specify which teams they'll play at home and which teams they'll play on the road.
I've got that right here. Yeah.
Here's a better list.
Okay. So yeah, their home opponents.
Oh, yeah, you have it all written out for us. I didn't even know.
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going, so I wasn't going to stop you. But their home opponents, obviously Bears, Packers, and Lions, and then they'll also host. Apparently, I can't talk right now. The Cardinals, Texans, Colts, 49ers, Falcons, and Jets. So with the odd number of games in the season, you'll notice they have more home games than away games this coming year. They also will be the quote-unquote home team for their London game.
Yep.
So that kind of evens out how many games will be played at US Bank Stadium and away from US Bank Stadium. And as of right now, they haven't announced who their opponent or the date and time or anything for that London game. They've only said the Vikings will play. And that'll be at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, not Wembley. Which I think the Hotspur Stadium, I might be wrong on this, but I think that's the one that was built with specifically, like, obviously soccer in mind, first and foremost.
Football.
But we'll go with soccer. We don't need that debate on this show. But I think the NFL had a hand in making some decisions on how that stadium was built, specifications and everything like that. So it's more, not that Wembley isn't a good stadium for actual football, but I think the Hotspur Stadium is like more fine-tuned for football. Yeah, and the away games, obviously Bears, Packers, and Lions again, but then they go to Jacksonville for the Jaguars, LA for the Rams, Seattle for the Seahawks, Tennessee for the Titans, and East Rutherford, New Jersey for the Giants.
I appreciate the specificity of the location there for that team.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of misleading for both teams that claim to be from New York.
Yeah, I think there's only one New York team, and there's 3 that claim to be from New York. It's also a weird stance for you and I to take because we're not a fan of any of those teams. But, geographically, I mean, it's not like the Vikings say that they're the, I don't know, Northern Country Vikings. They're the Minnesota Vikings, so they can claim anywhere in the state.
That's right. Well, let's do this. Let's make some predictions here.
Oof, way too early predictions.
Way too early, and I mean, we're basing this on not a whole lot of
being homers.
Anything.
Yeah.
We're just a couple of dudes from Iowa that like drinking beer and talking about the Vikings. Mm-hmm. So we've got nothing to lose here, and don't take our predictions or opinions seriously.
Yeah, we're not going to concrete. Yes. I'm not going to hold you to whatever record you say. You're not going to do the same for me.
But those of you out there, if you know something or if you think something different, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you think. And
yeah, we want to know your guys' thoughts too.
We'll have to be slaves to the outcome when it comes out either this week or next week.
Yeah.
So
all that being said, we haven't actually talked about this, so this is a little bit of an on-air production meeting. But I'd assume you'll have the same thought process I do. I think it was episode 3 where we went through game by game. We made our predictions for each game. We even had our wives and kids make predictions, and we flipped a coin to see what the coin said would happen for this previous 2023 season. I'd assume we're going to do the same. That was a lot of fun, and I think that episode did pretty well.
I'm planning on it.
Yeah,
if you are.
Yeah, so we'll have a more thought out roster season prediction in a few episodes, definitely after the schedule's release. So,
And we'll flip the coin.
Yeah.
Just like we did the last time, too. I thought that was fun, and I was hopeful the coin would be more right than it was.
Yeah, the coin was very favorable. The coin, if I remember right, had the Vikings making it all the way to the NFC Championship game.
Yep, and then they lost.
Which, you know what? I'd prefer what actually happened, because if they had lost in the NFC Championship game, they don't have a high-end first-round quarterback right now, probably. And a high-end first-round edge defender. So.
Right. So, anyways, that's coming probably in the next couple of weeks. We will have that episode once we have the actual schedule in front of us. But now we don't. We only have the opponents, both home and away, and the fact that they're going to play a game in London at our disposal. So, I want you to predict who the Vikings play for their home opener.
Ooh.
And do they open the season at home, or do they open the season on the road? Let's start there.
All right. So
just kind of a shot in the dark.
So one thing I remember about last season that I was pretty excited for, and it didn't end up mattering, was that they didn't have any cold games, no cold weather games, between their home games at US Bank Stadium and their away games being timed out to be in nicer locations than, the Arctic tundra. I remember being excited about that in the preseason, that they wouldn't have to worry about a snow game. That would be really fun. And looking at the away teams, obviously we have the other NFC North teams, which the Bears and the Packers would be the candidates for a cold game away. And then the other away teams, the Jaguars, that's not going to be a cold game. The Rams, that's in LA. At most, that might be a raining game. But is that a roofed stadium?
It's enclosed above, but it's like open air kind of on the sides.
Yeah.
SoFi Stadium is.
Okay, so not rainy at all. Definitely not cold. Seahawks, that's going to be rainy and loud. Titans, it'd be weird if it was a cold or snowy game. And the Giants very well could be a tundra
Tennessee, it can get cold.
Yeah.
In November and December.
Yeah, you don't typically see the foot of snow on the ground.
No. But it could be 30 degrees and flurries.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll finally get to an answer to your question. First, home game. I think the NFL is going to want the Vikings to either host Kirk Cousins early in the season or host that game in London to really mix up dust up the excitement and the storylines across the world. So my guess is that the Vikings will face the Falcons in London. And that'll
Way to not answer my question.
That'll be late in the season. I was trying to say they might host the Falcons in their first home game, but I think it's probably going to be a divisional game. I think they're going to love the idea of a Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, if JJ's even starting at that point, which that's a whole different conversation. But they would love for that matchup to be early in the season, and I think US Bank Stadium is going to be a great spot for that. So I'll say a Bears home opener. And outside of that...
That's interesting because they haven't played the Bears super early.
Yeah.
I feel like in the last couple of seasons. So last season they played the Bears in week 6.
And that was...
At Chicago.
Okay.
And then they played them again at home week 12.
Okay.
And we went to a game 2 seasons ago at home against the Bears in week 17. Was that still a 17-week season 2 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
That was that meaningless game. It was my first game at US Bank Stadium.
Well, I forgot because I know the year after that we went to the regular season ending game against the Bears in Chicago.
Right.
So they went 2 straight years ending the season against the Bears, just one in Minnesota and one in Chicago.
And so that's why I say it's interesting that you would say that they're going to start the season with the Bears.
Yeah.
But I think you could be onto something. I like the idea of a possible rookie v rookie matchup. Obviously, unless something crazy happens between now and September, Caleb Williams is the bona fide starter.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
In Chicago.
Yeah, they're going to do the thing with Caleb Williams that I know the Vikings won't do. Caleb Williams is the current QB1 for the Bears.
Yep.
No matter what anybody says, like he's going to quote unquote compete for the job. No, he is the QB1. He's been the QB1 since January. You know,
Yep.
like
Tyson Bagent, take a seat, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But we're not Bears podcast, so
That's
I
right.
think it'll be a home opener against the Bears, and I hope it'll be an away. The first away game will be against the Giants, just to get that up north New York game out of the way earlier in the season, so you don't have to worry about the cold weather.
It's fair.
That's my hope. I guess
That's fair.
there's no way to predict this. What do you think? What?
I actually think they won't start at home. Are you going to get some beers?
I am. Yeah.
Do it. I don't think they'll start at home. I think they're going to start on the road. And that's just based off of the fact that they started at US Bank Stadium this year. And I'd like to think that the league tries to keep it somewhat fair, mix it up a little bit so that teams aren't always having the advantage. So let's look at the away games here quick. You have the 3 divisional games: Bears, Lions, Packers, Jags, Rams, Seahawks, Titans, Giants. I'm going to say, I haven't given a ton of thought to this. I'll say they start on the road at Green Bay.
Okay.
I'm going to say they start on the road at Green Bay. I'm basing that on very little other than I think the league likes those Vikings-Packers rivalry games.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget, it was the day my daughter was born, or the day after my daughter was born. My oldest daughter was born. I was in the hospital and I watched the season opener. It was actually the first game. It was this game right here in this panorama.
Oh, yeah.
Vikings-Packers, first game at US Bank Stadium. I watched that from the hospital, holding my newborn daughter in my arms.
Aw.
September of 2017. So,
And a win for the Vikings, if I remember correctly.
Yes, they won. So I think they start on the road at Lambeau, and for no other reason than it's a divisional game, and the league seems to like those divisional games to bookend the season, the front end and the back end. But the second part of my question was, do they start at home or away? I say away against the Packers. The home opener, I like your thought. I think the home opener is against the Falcons.
Okay.
And I don't think it comes until 2 or 3 weeks into the season. I could see it being week 2. I could even see it being week 3.
Okay.
Having a little bit of a road trip before an early season homecoming. I don't know how common that is in the NFL scheduling world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are some statistics out there that we could find to either support or deny that. But I like your thought of an early season matchup against Kirk Cousins to really stir the pot. I don't disagree with you that perhaps they play them in London as well.
Yeah.
But those London games, to me, the Saints game was a little different in 2022, but the Browns in 2017 and the Steelers in 2013, there was seemingly no
That's true.
logical rivalry or any sort of connection between the teams. It was just let's just pick a couple of teams and it works in the schedule. We'll send them across the pond and they'll go play and it'll be great.
I wonder how much goes into those London games. If they look at statistically, the Browns do really good for whatever reason in London. I wonder if they look at that, or if it's just a timing thing. That would be an interesting thing to see their decision-making process for how they decide that.
There is, and maybe we can post this in the description below. There's a really cool YouTube video that I think the NFL put out.
Okay.
Kind of documenting the process that their team takes to making the schedule. And they kind of, I'll have to share it with you, and you should watch it. And those of you at home, you should watch it too. It is fascinating.
Cool.
It was one of those things that I think I was homesick and I was really bored.
Yeah.
And so I'm just flipping through YouTube on the TV, and I came across how the NFL schedule is made. And I was just captivated by all of it. They went into the history, and there was a guy, I don't remember his name, but historically he had always made the schedules for the NFL, and he had these little you know those like circular key tag, like they're like labels that you put on like key rings?
Yeah.
So he had these little circular key ring tabs for each team, and it was like, you know, the Vikings and the Jets and the whatever. And then he had this huge board with nails on it. And it was a grid. It was like home team, away team. I'm probably getting this horribly wrong because I've not seen this in a while.
We're all going to watch back that video.
Yeah, and you can correct all the things that I am getting wrong in my description here. But he took those little key ring things and hung them on nails, and he would just step back and analyze, and then he would say, nope, that game doesn't work. And he would take that game off and move it here, and he would take this game and move it up here. And it was this months-long process of just agonizing over every single game in the NFL schedule until he had figured it out. And then it was like, okay, this is it. And then it was published, and then it became official, and then they played the games, and that was it. And it's much less simplistic than that now.
Yeah.
They have, I mean, they're using computers and technology, and there's a team of people. It's like, you know, at least I think like 8 or 9 or 10 people involved in the process, and they generate thousands of iterations of the schedule each and every week, and then they come together and they talk about things like, what are the storylines, and what should we do on Monday night here, and who's going to play in the Thanksgiving game. And it's, I don't know, it was kind of mind-boggling to see all of that. So we'll definitely link to that. I'll find it and I'll put it in. Maybe it's not on YouTube. Maybe it's like a Netflix thing.
Sure, it's somewhere. Yeah.
Either way, we'll find it, and we'll post it in the description below, and I'll send it to you as well, because it's certainly worth watching. But there's a lot that goes into it, and it's a months-long process. I think even to just determine like the formula for who plays who, I think that took a while to really come up with, because it seemed like for a while it was just kind of a crapshoot, so to speak, other than the divisional games.
Well, and I know as far as that goes, there's certain rules. Like if you go on the Vikings website right now, or if you Google like Vikings future opponents, on their website, Vikings.com, there's a page that lists out, even though they don't have the full details of the schedule, they have listed out everything they know about future opponents up through 2026 and maybe even beyond that, just because they know, like, okay, here are the rules. Obviously, rule number 1, you play your divisional opponents twice a year. And then they know, like, the next few years, every division plays each other, and they know how that formula works. And then there's the whole thing where every year it's determined if you're where you rank in your division. If you're first, third, second, fourth, whatever, then you play that same ranked team throughout the other divisions. There's a whole bunch of formulas.
So, well, and so like just looking at the Vikings opponent this year, I know we're taking kind of a tangent.
No, this is good. I'm interested in this.
But so the Vikings will play, and I think the NFC North plays the AFC South, the Jags, the Colts, the Texans, and the Titans. Are they all in the NFC or AFC South?
Yep.
And then they also play the NFC West, the Cardinals, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Niners, right? So I believe by division, you're matched up with other divisions, and so you have to play teams from those divisions. And then there's also some, like, this team finished similar to you in the other conference, and so you play them. And so who would that be for the Vikings?
I think that's where you're getting the Falcons this year, and maybe the Jets as well. Okay. And that closes out.
It's basically the schedule.
So that's why you'll see towards the end of the year, you'll see reporters tweet out like, oh, there you go, that's it. We know at least the finalized opponents for next year. Because I say on the Vikings website, you can look up through the next couple of years who their opponents will be. They also can't know who's going to finish in what's place in their division. So they're only going to tell you what they know right now, which is the handful of...
I think the division versus division opponents,
that's
like NFC North versus AFC South or whatever, those are pretty well like laid out, and there's a pattern to it, and it just reiterates over and over again. So every however many years, the NFC North will then, whatever it is, 4 years from now or 5 years from now, they'll play the AFC South again.
Yeah. That's why you could probably go through and figure out how many times the Vikings are guaranteed to play the Patriots in the next 30 years. Based off of those rules that I don't know off the top of my head right
And that
now.
number could fluctuate again based on if those two teams finish similarly in their respective conferences, then they'll be matched up again.
Yeah.
So anyways, there is a rhyme to the reason behind what they're doing. But I feel like that's only more recent. I feel like even as kids, and maybe we just didn't pay attention to it as much.
That's probably more likely.
I also feel like it was maybe just underdeveloped, though. It's more developed and it's more concrete now than it has been previously.
Well, and on top of all of that, too, you have other factors that you might not normally think of. Just the fact that the Giants and the Jets share a stadium as well as the Rams and the Chargers. So obviously those teams can't host a home game that week at the same time or even the same day, really. Logistically, that wouldn't work.
Well, and I know, US Bank Stadium, for example, hosts the Minnesota High School State Football.
Yeah, so that's got to be a factor in the scheduling.
Yep.
I know the Chiefs share a parking lot and a whole little mini city with the Royals. So I'm sure there's some bit in their formula that, hey, the Chiefs and the Royals probably shouldn't have a game at the same time, or even where traffic is coming and going, because it's the same parking lot. The Royals fans tailgate in the same parking lot the Chiefs fans tailgate in. And then you get oh crap, is Taylor Swift going to have this tour and is planning? It sounds like a joke, but we can't have a Vikings game when she's planning on being at US Bank Stadium. And I'm sure those things are planned out far enough ahead of time too.
For sure. Well, and then you have those situations where the dome collapses on the Metrodome, and then you're like, oh crap,
the whole thing.
What do we do? And then they ship the whole team off to Detroit, and they end up playing in an otherwise empty Ford Field, which was actually, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But
so that's and even the year I think it was the same year the Vikings had to play later, a couple games later, had to basically de-snow TCF Bank Stadium. A non-NFL venue that was already closed up for the season. So I'm sure that, however far down on the list of backup plans, that was already on the list of backup plans. Okay, TCF Bank Stadium is a disaster backup for the Vikings. And that's got to be a contingent in every area. Oh crap, if we can't, at least the first thing we're going to look at is this college stadium for this NFL team.
If a hurricane rips through Miami and the Dolphins have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, that just happened last season. I'm glad that is not my responsibility.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And truthfully, that documentary that I watched kind of unpacks it all. And it's been a few years since I've watched it. But it's well worth a watch for you and a watch for anybody out there listening to us.
Yeah, I'm excited now. Let me know what that is. I'll look it up.
And it is kind of overwhelming to sit here and think about oh man, what would I do in this situation? And yeah, I am glad that it's not my job. Let's talk about this, because we've talked about now home opener and first game of the season, right? Let's talk about those divisional games. And more specifically, let's talk about the end of the season, because the NFL seemingly lately loves to push those divisional rivalries to the end of the season.
Yeah.
In fact, this season, to just kind of briefly recap,
the 23 season. Yeah.
Yes, the Vikings played the Lions, the Packers, and the Lions weeks 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
So they played the Lions twice in 2 weeks, lost both of them, and played the Packers at home and also lost. So what's your prediction there? End of the season / divisional games. Do we see any of those at all? Or none at all? And if we do see some, who is it?
Well, I think you're guaranteed to play one of those three teams, the Lions, Bears, or Packers, at the end of the season. I think that's almost a guarantee. That, like you just laid out, the NFL loves to do those. They like to kind of maybe sprinkle one divisional game in the early part of the season, but then really back end those divisional games So I think, you're pretty much guaranteed week 7 or week 18 it's going to be against one of those two or one of those three. And the whole question is who and where. I mean, the Vikings closed out on the road last 2 games last year, right?
They were home against the Lions week 16, home against the Packers week 17, at Detroit week 18.
Yeah. Well, and the whole away home thing last year was really interesting because they didn't have a back-to-back either home or away until week 11 and week 12. Other than that, it was just either or. They ping-ponged home, away, you know.
And then even after the 2-week road trip to Green Bay and then to Atlanta, it was home, away, home, bye. And then they had another 2-game road trip, 2-game homestand, the only homestand of the whole season before ending at Detroit.
Yeah, so I don't think it's crazy to think they could close out the season with multiple home games against divisional opponents. I guess that's as detailed as I'm comfortable getting, that it will be a week 17, week 18 homestand, obviously against divisional opponents.
So you think 2 games back-to-back
just
against
statistically to change it up from last year, how realistic would it be to be the same exact scenario as last year?
Honestly, I maybe disagree a little bit. Okay. I think the Vikings won't be as good as they were. I mean, before Kirk Cousins got injured last year, the Vikings were a playoff-bound team.
With a handful of primetime games.
Yep. I don't think we'll see the Vikings playing in primetime at the end of the season, nor really at all through the season. Maybe a Thursday night game. I think that's the low-hanging fruit for primetime games.
Well, and every team gets a Thursday night game.
Yeah, so we'll see one of those for sure. Probably not more than that. And I would guess maybe like a few Sunday or Monday night games. Not a ton. We're going to mostly be playing on Sunday afternoons, would be my guess.
That's fine with me.
That's great for me, too. But all of that to say, I think they won't put those divisional games, or they won't like backload those. Maybe one, week 17 or 18, we'll see one of the 3 divisional teams. But I think the schedule makers will kind of look at the Vikings this season and say, well, they're going to be pretty mid this year.
Fair.
They're going to be, a 6, 7, maybe an 8-win team. It's not really going to make or break their playoff push. They might not even be in playoff contention even from the get-go.
Probably not.
So, I don't know that they'll put all of that out there for the Vikings.
Yeah.
So that's my prediction.
Yeah, they're not. I agree with you. They're not walking into the season as a highly touted, big ticket primetime valued team. I mean, just maybe if you factor in that they've got, one of the young top drafted quarterbacks. But honestly, by week 5, we may know like, oh crap, JJ McCarthy was the worst mistake the Vikings have ever made. I don't expect that to happen. I don't expect him to be playing by week 5 anyways. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They're not high on the radar of supposed to be good NFL teams. I would imagine if we looked up their odds right now, if they're available for winning the Super Bowl, they're probably 25 or worse, as far as teams making the Super Bowl, which I know is super fun to hear when you're listening to a Vikings podcast and you're a fan as well. So keep listening.
Prove us wrong, Vikings.
Yes.
Prove us wrong.
And as JJ has said, prove them right. He's going to prove Vikings right for picking them. But yeah, that's probably a good thought to have there. Of
one other totally meaningless prediction that doesn't really affect it does factor in a little bit, but it's certainly not the biggest factor in terms of the NFL schedule or a specific team schedule. But where do you predict the bye to land for the Vikings?
I think they're going to get an early bye.
Early bye?
Yeah. So I guess I don't know if they switched it up when they added a team.
What's a range? Like, what do you think?
I think you're looking
3-game range for where the bye sits.
Week 4 through 7, or 4 through 6. One of those 3 weeks is probably going to be when you're seeing the bye, just because it was such a late bye last year, and I feel like it's been a late bye the last few years. I know last year it was 13? Yeah.
Yeah, week 13.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, we're probably due for an early buy. What about you?
I'm thinking a little bit later.
Okay.
For no other reason than to just disagree.
Sure. Hey, that's fine.
Stir the pot a little bit, but I'll go 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
I'll go week 7, 8, or 9.
I do think the placement of the bye week could factor into when the Vikings start thinking about putting JJ in. So I'm still of the mindset Sam Darnold is QB1 until and it can't be that he loses the job. It's got to be that for JJ's development, it has to be that McCarthy wins the job, at least for me to feel good about it. And we'll never know because we're not in practice and we're not in the meeting, so we don't know what's going to exactly go behind KOC's mindset. But I don't want it to be, JJ's only starting because last week Sam Darnold threw 3 interceptions. But all that to say, if the Vikings win their first few games and their bye week is week 6 and they've won a couple more than they've lost, but Sam Darnold's just not wowing everybody, there could be like a perfect time to be like, you know what, this season we might do something. Sam Darnold's not wowing everybody, so let's throw JJ in there. There's that perfect transition period where we can just get him ready. We know he's got the bye week to get ready and then the whole week leading up to the game. I think that could factor in. I'm still hoping the Vikings play this super smart and super overly cautious and almost just let Darnold, outside of injury or 30 interceptions, keep the job.
Well, that's an interesting point to make, and it's an interesting segue to kind of our final segment that we've got planned here.
Yeah, didn't even plan that.
I know, but it works out perfectly. So you sent me this article earlier today, and I was able to read through it. The title of the article is 4 Vikings Losers of the Draft, written by friend of the show, Dustin Baker.
Yeah.
And as always, great content. And Dustin has identified 4 players, we'll say 3 specific players in one particular group of players as the 4th player, that are on the hot seat and could potentially be disappointed by the Vikings' decisions in the draft when it comes to their ability to play for the Vikings.
Yeah,
so to speak.
All these guys, their lot on the team was altered. It was directly altered by picks, that the Vikings made in the draft. So yeah, just to go through them, I want to hear your thoughts. The first one that Dustin listed out, obviously, we were just talking about him, Sam Darnold. I kind of laid out what I was thinking about it before we segued. You read the article, but just in your thought process, why specifically for Sam Darnold was the draft making his life harder?
Well, obviously, Sam Darnold walked into Egan with a different mindset than Kirk Cousins walked into Atlanta.
And weirdly, they're in a very similar situation right now.
Right. But that's the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is that Kirk Cousins walked into Atlanta thinking, I will be the guy. They're not going to draft a quarterback because they signed me in free agency. They're going to spend their draft picks, and they've got a good one on an offensive weapon for me to throw to or whatever, and it'll be great. And then the Falcons turn around and draft Michael Penix. And it's one of these just dumbfounded, everybody outside of Atlanta is just what were you guys thinking? Why did you do that? And Michael Penix wasn't even that thought of that highly to go. I mean, that was the shock of the draft. That sent shockwaves through the NFL for sure when they picked him up. So all of that to say, I think Sam Darnold knows his role. He knows his spot. He knows that he's making $10 million for a season, and he knows that he's the quote unquote bridge quarterback. I think he knew it was coming, and I don't think he's disappointed. I don't think he's sitting at home saying, "Woe is me! Why did I sign this contract?" I think he's probably thinking to himself this is the league, man. This is how it works. And I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew that they were going to draft somebody, and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to try to prove myself, and we'll see what happens. So maybe to some extent, I would maybe slightly disagree with Dustin's assessment that he's a loser in the draft. I think maybe he knew, and
I think Dustin would agree with you on that mindset.
I think he'll embrace that. I don't know.
We'll have to ask him.
Shooting the breeze here, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that he's, really bent out of shape about this, and
I
don't think it's going to affect his performance that much. But obviously, when a team drafts a guy and they work hard to get the guy that they wanted, and it's been clear from all of the videos, all of the behind the scenes, all of the KOC. Like I watched even the JJ and Dallas Turner coming to Egan and walking the facility and walking into KOC's office for the first time and dapping up Kwesi and everything. Like there's some excitement around JJ McCarthy in that building, and that's refreshing and that's fun. And I'm sure Sam is maybe a little like, you still have me, I'm here, but I don't know. I don't know that I'd call him a loser. I would call him a very competitive option at quarterback. Yeah. And to some extent, he's got the leg up because he's got the experience. He's played elsewhere, and he was there first, right? Sometimes it's just like, well, I was here first. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I agree with you. I think he knew the second the Vikings became an option for him to sign that, this year I have the opportunity to come in as QB1 with a rookie. We've known since this time last year the Vikings were going to draft a rookie quarterback in the first round, So Sam Darnold, he knew before he signed on the dotted line or even agreed, he's going to come in, be QB1 until he's no longer QB1. And I think that lights some kind of fire under anybody, whether you know your situation before you walk into it or not. He is he's got that leg up. He's got the 5-step head start, and he's going to do everything he can to keep the lead in that race until either he loses it or JJ he can't run faster than JJ. But he knew that, and he signed up for that. And, by the way, you also are going to get paid $10 million for your efforts this year.
It's not a bad gig.
Yeah, it's a good gig. I think this was a personal business decision for Sam Darnold to sign with the Vikings, knowing that. It's a sweet situation if you think you have what it takes to make the next step, to do what Baker Mayfield did a year ago today, or a year ago when Baker Mayfield, he'd bounced around. He had been, the high number 1 draft pick for the Browns with a little success, but then they lost confidence in him and he bounced around. I think Baker and Sam Darnold were teammates in Carolina. Baker bounced from, where did he go? It was Cleveland, and then I know he played for the Rams for a little bit, and then Carolina, and then was that it? Then Tampa Bay. So I think Sam Darnold, he's trying to revive his career with the best case scenario of like winning every game and being the Vikings savior and leading them to the Super Bowl and earning that crazy contract, which can you imagine?
Let me be clear. I would be totally on board with that. I don't care at all that he's currently quarterback 1. If that's the result, we will be singing Kwesi's praises all day long. Like, how did you get a guy so cheap? And that was amazing. And I mean, Baker in Tampa didn't have a bad season, and he led them to the playoffs. He
earned a $100 million contract, or 90 or whatever he got. He revived his career, and who knows, next year he could turn out to be garbage, or he really did revive his career and finally got into a good situation. He's going to be good in Tampa for 10 years,
And who knows? That could be Sam Darnold as well.
Could be. I think, man, can you imagine us sitting in these chairs after a year where Sam Darnold, and Dustin Baker has said this before too, it would be the most Viking thing for Sam Darnold to just light it up and be too good to bench. And then it's like, well, what do you do now? You just had a guy, in theory, lead you deep in the playoffs or take you to the Super Bowl or do something crazy. It's like we can't let Sam Darnold go after doing all that crazy stuff. Like, what do you do? That's a good problem to have a year from now.
Well, and I think the good news for the Vikings is, yeah, maybe Sam comes out and just kills it, and he's amazing. He has a Baker Mayfield year in 24, and they have to make a decision like that. Well, J.J. McCarthy's still going to be on his rookie contract, so that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And other teams have proven that it's effective to let that young guy sit. I mean, Jordan Love looked pretty good after coming out. Aaron Rodgers is proof of that. And it's not just the Packers that have done that. Other teams have done that too. But I don't know. I wouldn't be at all disappointed if
winning games is always good. We root for the team, not the name on the back of the jersey.
Right.
So
now, I mean, we're maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Maybe putting the cart before the horse, and we haven't seen a lick of football from either of these guys in a Vikings uniform yet. So there's so much to be determined. We've got all off season to really dissect all of that. But
we have really quick before we move on, we have kind of seen that hypothetical situation play out a little bit for the Vikings in recent memory. A very young and up-and-coming quarterback had a devastating injury that was clear he wasn't going to play that year in Teddy Bridgewater. And out of nowhere, the Vikings traded for what I think is still a really good trade, Sam Bradford. And he didn't start that first game because he'd been on the team for like a week. But then Sam Bradford came in and was playing really well. His one full year with the Vikings, he set the single season, it's now broken, but the single season record for completion percentage. The Vikings started off with a 5-0 record. And I'll never forget, I was listening to the Power Trip in the midst of that 5-0 run. And one of the three guys on the Power Trip said, like, what do we do if like Sam Bradford is good and like leads us to a Super Bowl? Like, what do we do? And one of the other guys, Corey Cove, was like, well, if he wins us the Super Bowl, you sign him to a lucrative contract and he's your quarterback from now on. Who cares about Teddy Bridgewater? Like, yeah, at the time we knew Teddy would probably come back and play and have a longer career with the Vikings. But if a guy leads you to the Super Bowl, like, he's your guy. Like, so we've kind of seen it. Obviously, didn't play out that way with Sam Bradford and the Vikings, mostly because his knees are made of tissue paper. But we've kind of seen that kind of scenario start to play out a little bit, and it was really exciting and really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Sam Darnold, he knows what he's doing. He's trying to play for his career.
So we spent a lot of time talking about Sam Darnold. I still disagree. I don't think he's a loser of the draft. I think he knows what he's getting into. Yeah. I would say he is, how should we put it? Maybe an equal opportunity quarterback.
Yeah, he's fighting for his life, but he would have been fighting for his life if his backup was Tyler Thigpen. And not a top 10 rookie quarterback.
Now, the next guy on the list, I think, is truly the biggest loser in the draft.
You're a loser.
And that's not a loser in the derogatory sense, but it's. I think the writing on the wall is that Nick Mullins won't be in a Vikings uniform.
Yeah, I think it's down to Nick Mullins or Jaron Hall. I think just contract-wise, it's going to be Nick Mullins gone. Maybe both, but probably for sure Nick Mullins.
Yes.
Hopefully via a trade. I'd love it if the Vikings could get a 6th or a 7th round pick or even a swap, you know?
Yeah, he would be a great trade option. And the Vikings could get something for him. Maybe not a ton.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Something. But in terms of a future with the purple team, Nick Mullins has to know that his days are numbered and probably won't be wearing our favorite team's jersey this fall.
Yeah, that being said, I don't think his NFL career is done by any means. He can still throw 400 yards.
Yeah.
3 to 4 interceptions, but still 400 yards. And, I mean, he may be 1 year behind Sam Darnold in that. Maybe Sam Darnold, he's coming into a situation that he's trying to jumpstart his career again. Maybe Nick Mullins is looking at his Sam Darnold's quote-unquote 49ers year, where he can kind of go in, know he's a backup with the potential of flashing when he does get on the field and getting a bridge quarterback contract the next year or even this coming year. I don't know.
And to be fair, Nick Mullins has proven that he can play, right? Unfortunately, the mistakes outweigh the successes most of the time, and that's frustrating as a fan, and you want those interceptions to go away. And you've said, like, kind of famously now on our podcast that, you know, if he throws 2, you don't give a guy the chance to even throw 3. You sit him. You bench
My
him.
rule is you don't let him throw 4.
You don't let him throw 4. All right. Well, I was off by 1. But
That's all right. It's still 2 is not much better than 3.
Right. But I mean, there were plenty of times this season, several that I can think of, where the Vikings just kept riding with him, and
they didn't have a lot of options.
They didn't, but I mean, he just kept throwing picks, and it was just frustrating. And then we lost all these games, and there was this like tiny glimmer of hope, it just got squashed out, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun to watch. So I think, honestly, he's number 1 in terms of
who had the worst,
in the drafts. And maybe Dustin's list isn't meant to be taken numerically. Not sure what his intent was that way, but I think he tops my list of biggest losers in the draft because he's not going to be a Viking, if I had to guess, moving forward.
I've also said, too, and I'll stand by it, the number 2 at any position is a definitive position. A quarterback 2 is an actual position. It's not just the guy behind the quarterback 1. Nick Mullins thrives when he can be the first option after the first guy gets injured. Like, we've seen Nick Mullins, his career is built on coming in mid-game after the first guy got a concussion or something or couldn't play, and Nick Mullins, he can kind of turn it on out of nowhere off the bench and throw a bunch of yards and maybe do something special. He's a really good quarterback too, and maybe that's where he finds his career. Unfortunately, the Vikings have 4 quarterbacks, and he's not the best option at QB2. That's either going to be Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy.
And the other one's going to be QB1.
Yeah, yep.
So, yeah, I agree with you there.
I mean, honestly, the Chiefs could probably use a QB2. They don't need somebody to come in and compete for the job, but if Pat Mahomes breaks his arm, you need somebody to come in and try to salvage a game.
Or if he sprains his ankle and has to come out for a couple of plays, which is probably more likely.
And I don't know who the Chiefs have at QB2, but yeah, I'm just thinking, like, you need a guy. He's best served for a team with an established starter.
Well, we can move quickly through these other 2 here. I think those first 2 are definitely the most talk-worthy talking points there. But Andrew Van Ginkel was a surprising name that I saw on the list because I thought to myself, well, he's a new acquisition and kind of a new toy for Flores to play with on the defense. But then I read Dustin's kind of paragraph description on why this might be a loser, and it made sense to me, and I can understand the train of thought here that signing Dallas Turner really complicates things at that edge rush position, and I could see that, and I could see how he could be the odd man out in that OLB edge rush position. That's kind of a gray area, like and I think even we had a debate like last week or 2 weeks ago about, is Flores running a 4-3 or a 3-4, and where do these guys fit in that, and how do we define what the Vikings are doing defensively? But yeah, I don't know. It could make sense to me. I don't know that he's gonna be leaving anytime.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too.
I think he'll be a Viking at least this year.
Yeah, and I think he signed like a 3-year contract.
Was it 3 years? Okay,
and it pretty decent money too. I mean, it would be. I don't think he's in danger of being cut. I just think he went from the indisputed starter or heavy rotation guy, if not the starter, with Dallas Turner coming in. I think that's still the plan beginning of the season until, like I said with JJ, until he wins the job, until Dallas Turner comes in and starts demanding just through his play more and more plays. Andrew Van Ginkel, he's going to be the one to lose his snaps to an up-and-coming guy that nobody thought the Vikings would get an edge rusher, an elite edge rusher in the first round of the draft. He may have been one of the most surprised, like, oh, they just drafted a guy that's going to take some snaps away from me. I didn't expect that. I'm not a quarterback. I knew they were going to try to get a quarterback.
Well, I think that's an interesting position to talk about, because I think rookies in that position, I think the margin for error is wider.
Especially highly touted first-round rookies.
Yeah.
You get your leash. We've talked about that leash for every player. Your leash is pretty long if you're a first-round rookie.
In a first-round rookie edge rusher, I think at that position, like, your job is to line up and beat your man and get to the quarterback
and wreck some plays as best you can.
That's your job, right? Like, you're not the cornerback or the safety that has to analyze and read the eyes of the quarterback and follow the ball. And if you make one false move, boom, touchdown, and now you're on the bench. And
I think you'd agree, not to oversimplify any position on the field, but I know what you're saying. Like, if you can just be the pin your ears back guy, which in the best case scenario, that's what those outside linebackers, those edge rushers are. There's more to it. We know that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just run at the quarterback. But, yeah, I mean, it's not like you have to be a JJ and make sure you don't throw an interception. You just...
I think the quarterback position over any position is the most complex.
Yeah.
And you have to be mentally, physically, and emotionally capable to handle whatever comes your way. And so I think the margin for error there is much thinner than an edge rush. And I would even say that edge rush position is even more different than a safety or a cornerback.
Yeah, I agree.
Who could blow coverage and give up a touchdown, or even a wide receiver. You run the wrong route and you give up a pick, and it's your fault that the ball was picked off, not the quarterback's, because he was expecting you to be there and you weren't because you didn't make the right move or you didn't run the right route or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. I think those guys, they are the pin your ears back type of guys. That's what their coaches expect them to be. That's how they design the defense. And I think Flores, more than anything, more than anyone else in the league, designs his defense to be that kind of in-your-face, aggressive, kind of like Nazi blitzkrieg type of assault on you. Like, we're just going to keep coming at you all day, and we're going to keep coming at you from all sorts of different angles and looks. Like, I don't know. Andrew Van Ginkel, coming back to his name, yes, I could see how he'd be more of a rotational guy in this new reality with Dallas Turner being drafted. But even then, like, that's a good thing for the Vikings to have a guy like that. To, like, he's already proven to be pretty successful. And, man, if he comes in relief of anybody, he's going to be fresh. He's going to be ready to go. And that defense probably isn't going to miss a beat with him on the field.
And one thing that is in Van Ginkel's favor is he has already been a Flores player.
Yes.
And he wouldn't be with the Vikings right now if Flores thought anything negative about him or his play. Like, Flores was probably the one that's like, hey, that guy, I'd be pretty happy if you signed that guy. Like, or you're gonna sign that guy because he's what I need in my defense. So that's one thing that's in his favor already. So it'll be an interesting. It only made the defense better.
Agreed.
But I can see why he's on this list of disappointed players after the draft.
So the last one here that Dustin has is the veteran defensive backs. There are currently 17 guys on the roster, and only, according to Dustin, only about 10 to 12 will make the team, and that's a realistic expectation.
Yeah, and that includes, obviously, your cornerbacks, your safeties, all those guys in the defensive backfield. I mean, you're talking Harrison Smith, who's getting a little bit older. You're talking Lewis Seen, who has been a major disappointment on the field in his career. Granted, he's had a devastating injury, but still. You're talking a Caleb Evans, who, I mean, he's shown flashes, but he's also shown flashes of being pretty disappointing at times. So there's probably 5 to 7 guys in that list of players that just numbers-wise are not going to make the team. That's going to be a very competitive position, just all of the defensive backfield. And I think they only drafted one guy, right? I forget his name. It's probably right there.
Kyrie Jackson.
Yeah. I think he was the only one drafted, but there's a few undrafted guys. And obviously some guys that have been drafted in the last few years. Jay Ward, Caleb Evans, Lewis Seen. There's going to be some tight competitions and some tough decisions. Some of those guys might not make the Vikings, but they'll get picked up on other teams.
Who's the first man out, do you think?
Man, so you have this list up here.
You can peek.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to peek. They signed a couple of guys in free agency. AJ Green, Joejuan Williams. Joejuan Williams might be one of the first guys out just because he bounced up and down between the practice squad last year. I think Theo Jackson has a little bit more stability than the casual fan might think, just because he was, I think, the first free agent the Vikings signed this year. So they obviously like him. And he was playing over Lewis Seen very early in the season. We might see a surprise. I would consider a Caleb Evans a surprise cut for me, but only slightly. So we're going to see some of those. And honestly, I think the biggest surprise would be a Harrison Smith. If for some reason, and I don't expect this to happen, but if for some reason he just gets outplayed in training camp and loses the job, it would be slightly shocking, but not fall off your chair shocking to see him.
I think if that happens, I would expect him to just throw in the towel and be done.
Well, I think it would be a very, I don't expect this, but I think it would be a very personal conversation, and it would be one where they don't just bring him in and say, hey, bring your playbook, hey, we cut you, sorry. It would be like, hey, this is why you are a legacy player. But for that to happen, it would take a surprise one of these guys to just beat him out. And they've already said Harrison Smith, they're going to be cognizant of his snaps in each game and how much they use him. And we're talking about a guy who's, 34? It's football it's ancient.
Basically our age.
Yeah, but like this guy still has like 70 years left of his life. But, I mean, if it came down to that and they're like, we can't let go of this other guy because he's doing better than Harrison Smith, like that's what it would have to be. Somebody makes it impossible to cut themselves. And Harrison Smith, as much as you love his name and his legacy, that's how it would happen. Is he's just not up there.
Well, he's at the top of this list in terms of defensive backs. He's number one, and I don't know if that's in any sort of intentional order.
Well, if you look at the other guys at the top of the list, one is Harrison Smith, and then Cam Bynum, and then Josh Metellus. Those that top
even
six,
even Byron Murphy and Mekhi Blackman.
Yeah,
I mean they were very influential on the defensive secondary this last season. So
I read that list that Dustin listed out in order of importance.
As kind of a rough draft depth chart almost.
So if I was reading that correctly, then I went too far. Then his first out would be somebody like AJ Green, who he has listed at 17.
I like how this is a way sidetrack, but you swiped one way, and this is a point of contention for me.
Oh, man.
Because I think that a trackpad should, if you swipe down, the page should go down, and if you swipe up, the page should go up.
It's like a touch screen, dude. Right? Think of how would you swipe it if you were touching the screen?
I don't know. There's just something in my brain.
You're wrong.
That switches when I am on a laptop versus when I'm on my phone.
That's fine.
But it's just funny that you would reach over and touch my computer.
I was also trying to
not
by that way. Get too far away from my mic. If you're watching, this is peak podcast right here.
Yeah. We're awkward. It's fine.
That's okay.
It is what it is. Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, obviously not even like an opinion, but just a fact of the matter is there will have to be some cuts made. There will have to be changes of some nature. Maybe it's not even a cut, but there can't be 17 defensive backs on a team. It just can't happen.
And something we haven't even said yet that as much as you wouldn't want it to be, but is absolutely a factor in all of this, is the financials.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody like, I'm just picking a name out here, maybe Lewis Seen can't be cut this year just because then you're eating a bunch of money from a first round picks contract. I don't know that that's the case, but like, yeah, maybe we're just looking at it from a play standpoint, but yeah.
Well, I mean, theoretically,
the contracts will factor into that.
Theoretically, the Vikings have already eaten a lot of his contract because he hasn't played at all.
Yeah. I think back in that specific scenario, I think back to Laquan Treadwell.
Yeah.
His last year with the Vikings cut him either in training camp or, at final cutdowns or pretty early in the season. And then there were injuries and needs at the wide receiver position, and Laquan Treadwell was still on the street, and they signed him again. And part of the reason they signed him again was obviously they needed bodies in the room for wide receivers, but also like he didn't cost any more. He had already been paid that money, and apparently, and it kind of surprised me, when they signed him again, like that was just, they were already paying him, so he could just come back and still. I
didn't know how that worked.
It was probably like a bad deal for him, because like he could have just been sitting on the couch and still earning that money, but then his job was like, actually, no, you can come back and you're not going to get paid.
Or he could have gone and signed with another team and made the Vikings money plus.
Well, and that's a whole like offset language, and I don't know anything about what his situation was, but yeah.
Well, I know I can speak to, because I'm a teacher and I know how it works in teacher world. A lot of people that teach in Iowa, where we live, they'll teach until they hit their pension number. Sure. And then they'll retire, and then they'll go across the river, and they'll teach in Illinois, and they'll draw on their pension in Iowa, and they'll take a salary from Illinois, and they'll kind of double dip. And
as much as a cesspool of a state Illinois is, being a teacher over there is not the worst.
They get paid more.
They get paid more, and their retirement seems to be a little bit better. Though I'm not super complaining about Iowa's teachers, because I joke with my wife, about 40% of our, maybe 30% of our household income is teacher salary.
Well, some of your income comes from that, and
yeah,
100% of mine does, because my wife and I are both teachers, so we're definitely caught up in that world. But
you guys are saints. I couldn't do it.
Anyways, definitely going to be interesting to see how these free agent acquisitions and these draft picks meld together and create that final 53-man roster.
Yeah, that'll be a talker for us for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait for that, and I can't wait to see who ends up on the list. And to some extent, as bad as it seems, I can't wait to see who ends up off that list, because there are some names that I hope end up not on that list. No offense to the human beings behind those names, and I wish them well, but anyways, there's a lot of hope and a lot of expectation in the Vikings' future. Maybe not immediately, maybe not this season, but with the draft, with some of these free agent acquisitions, some good times ahead, hopefully.
Yeah. And we say it, this season is going to lower expectations, almost a crapshoot. It's almost like a red shirt. Like, you just want to see exciting things. I'm a total hypocrite, because I'm going to be super pissed after every loss and every interception. I'm still going to be just as mad.
Burn it down.
Fire
Start
everybody.
over.
No, but yeah, it'll be a fun season, and hopefully better than we expect.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we should probably wrap it up, because we get good at rambling.
We do.
We get a few beers in us, and
I forgot we were recording
chatty
there for a second.
That's the beauty of this thing, man. I mean, we started doing this, drinking good beer, having conversations about football and the Vikings, and
here we've had our own beer made, and we've talked to Dustin Baker on the show a handful of times, and hopefully some more cool and exciting things in the future.
Oh yeah, we've got some things planned.
Yeah,
I'm excited. Well, we should wrap things up here. We should let people know where they can find us quickly.
Yeah, anywhere social media wise, the Skol Hop. Just Google us, you'll find us. Our website we need to update. It's been a minute since we've touched that, but socials anywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit. email, theskolhop@gmail.com. Just, yeah, we're out here. Come talk to us. Leave us a review. Actually, that would be really nice if you left us a review and subscribe to us on really anywhere you're watching or listening to us.
We'll even take the bad comments. Like we had a kind of a negative, one of our first negative comments this last week.
Our last episode was the most viewed episode of an actual podcast we've had on YouTube. And I think it's got one comment that says, "This sucks."
But hey, we appreciate you, whoever you are.
Yeah.
And the fact that you at least watched to form an opinion on whether or not you liked what we do.
Yeah,
so.
I appreciate the time that it took to do that. I laughed. I sent a screenshot to you. It was
yes.
I actually laughed out loud. That was hilarious.
I appreciated your response to them too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, they gave us a view.
It's just another view.
So let us know if you were the one that commented that. How did we do this time? Did we still suck? And if we did, that's okay.
Yeah. Let us know how we could improve. I mean, we'll take constructive criticism.
Real quick, before we're done, we've already given an opinion on this beer on the show. What do you think tonight?
Now that I've had this twice, this might have to become
A
more
regular
of
thing.
like a staple in my beer consumption life. It's really good. I love the malty flavors. I'm just reading the description on the back of the can. I'll just read it for you. Burch is back with big flavors of hazelnut and bittersweet chocolate with a sweet but crisp body. Burch may have gone to the big forest in the sky, but Iowa's first mascot will never be forgotten. In Burch we trust.
Yeah.
I like it. And it's
good
good.
beer.
And I like the hazelnut definitely resonates with me. I'm a big coffee drinker, and
Maybe that's why I was thinking.
I like hazelnut coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I can taste the bittersweet chocolate in there too. It's just really good all around. And obviously brown, red, amber, anything kind of in that category, I'm going to reach for 9 times out of 10.
And I know episode art. I know exactly what I'm going to post because last time I was at Big Grove, I took a selfie with Burch.
There you go.
So there we go. All right, man. It's been a good episode.
Indeed it has.
Till next time.
Skol.
Skol.
That was a good episode. Hey Vikings fans, Evan here from the Skol Hop, and we just wanted to say thank you again so much for listening to the Skol Hop, and we also wanted to take one more opportunity to let you know that this episode of the Skol Hop has been brought to you by Big Top Ventures. If you're considering taking an all-inclusive trip to either Mexico or Jamaica, reach out to our friends at Big Top Ventures at bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Once again, that's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can get the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts throughout the region. Big Top Ventures. Step right up to your next big adventure. And thanks again for listening to the Skol Hop. Skol.